absolutely is essential for our survival to use these powerful tools in the most humane and wise way. And the only way to guarantee that is not to shuffle the responsibility off to somebody else, but to make sure that every citizen understands science and technology to some extent.
Lighten up, Francis.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it.
Right! You tell them I'm coming! And hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio. All right, thanks for listening while we take that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And yeah, we're going to get back to your host.
Good evening, everyone. It's Francis, and your next episode of Collision Course right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Clear skies, everyone. It's Francis, your host of Collision Course right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com every Sunday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. You're going to come here, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's going on in our solar neighborhood. Not just that, though. We're on a mission to uncover our place in the universe. You're going to come listen for some interviews. You're going to come listen to me. Either way, we'll know more so we can decide what's real and what is not in the space outside our atmosphere every Sunday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. It's your host, Francis, for another episode of Collision Course. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Let me pop into the chat room. If you're listening to me right now and you're not in the chat room on freedomslips.com, I recommend you go, because I'll drop links and pictures and links to articles and links to the things that we're going to be covering this evening during Collision Course. And this evening during Collision Course, it's all about comets. So we'll just roll into that information. By the time this show is over with, if you were not interested in comets before, hopefully you're going to be interested in comet/comet at the end of the show. We're going to go right in, and we're just going to say hi to some people in the chat room. Join us in the chat room at freedomslips.com. Great place to be during the show. During all the shows, you'll get to see other folks who are talking about what's being talked about during the show. You can probably leave questions into the host. Just like the chat room, you can leave a question into me inside the chat room. Jersey Dolphins, I can always guarantee that Jersey's in the chat room during the show. They love the show so much. The jurists, how are you? How are you? Jersey Dolphins, Wild Bob, Factor Theory. These may be people who were listening to the show before. If you're still listening, I'm going to say hello to you too. Harry, Popsicle Toast, how are you? Crab Cake, how are you? Lady Horse, how are you? I hope everyone is doing fine. Scorpio, you too. Mr. Rowe, how are you? And Harry, Wild Bob, Surrey Sunflower, Greenheart 1, Pat Rabbit, Hop Bowl for sure. We're also going to say hello to our friends in Red Deer, Canada. Michael, we're going to say hello to our friend in the Philippines. Midori, we'll say hello to our friend in Vietnam. Stephen, we'll say hello to our friend in Cameroon. Roland, if you are listening morning, noon, or night, we hope everyone is doing good. Cat Dog Girl and Jersey Dolphins and Pat Rabbit are active in the chat room. Join us in freedomslips.com. And when you visit freedomslips.com, take a moment to click on the donate button. This is the world's #1 listener-supported radio station. It gives voices to many, many hosts who speak on many, many topics. My topic is outer space. My time slot is 8 p.m. every Sunday from 8 to 10 p.m. And wouldn't you know, we're here, hop, hop. We're feeling good. Okay. Couple of things happened. Couple of things happened. I have to say that last week, was it last week? It might have been even earlier than that. As you all know, we give away these great sci-fi novels, and I've been late in my mailing the last 2 sci-fi novels to the recipients, who are going to get their sci-fi novels. If you're listening, I'm sorry, they're a little bit delayed. I'm going to get them out to you. And as well, yesterday morning, I was to have an interview with the Mr. Rob Walrick, who makes planispheres for his business, and he donates planispheres to worthy causes like the Astronomy Club of Cameroon and our good friend Roland in Cameroon. And I was to have an interview with him yesterday, and we were unable to get together on the interview, and I wanted to apologize to him on that. And from there, we'll move right on to the show, comets. I want to find this bit of comets from someone important. This is from the JPL. We'll just click on this because, see, this is what you get when you go into the chat room. You get the links about what we're talking about. And this is going to be a link that will take you to a description from Donald K. Yeomans in April 2007 from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, California Institute of Technology. Great comets in history. And we'll start here and we'll work our way through this show. And by the time we get to the other end of the show, we'll know why we're talking about great comets. And we'll start right off with this because I thought this was pretty good. A relative few comets, speaking of great comets, are so visually impressive as to be termed great comets. Just the right set of circumstances must occur far from the sun. The solid portion of the comets, which consists mostly of water, ice, and embedded dust particles, are inactive. They are not large enough to be seen with the naked eye. However, when near the sun, the icy cometary surfaces vaporize and throw off large quantities of gas and dust, thus forming the enormous atmosphere and tails that make comets so visually striking. It is the fluorescing of these gases, and particularly the reflection of sunlight from the minute dust particles in the comet's atmosphere and tail, that can make these objects so visually impressive. However, this activity by itself does not ensure that a comet will become a great comet. An active comet can only become great by making a particularly close approach to the sun, so that it produces enormous quantities of gas and dust, or by making a close approach to the Earth so that its tail can be easily viewed. In either case, great comets must be seen in a dark sky. And that last sentence may or may not be true. It really isn't when we talk about comets that we can see during the day. When applying the appellation great comet, which I am doing with the current comet in the sky, to a particular cometary return is a subjective process. The following table is an attempt to list the great naked eye comets that have been reported, with the single exception of periodic comet Halley. All the tabulated comets have passed through the inner solar system either for the first time, or the intervals between their returns are measured in thousands or millions of years. And on that link, if you follow it, you'll be able to go down. Don Yeomans actually lists 71 great comets, but Comet Halley shows up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 times. Well, 20 times. I see it in there again. So out of the 71, Halley is responsible for 20 or so of the great comet appearances in historical records. The first tabular entry gives the approximate date when the comet was first reported, and so this next paragraph tells us how to read those numbers. And you can go, if you're interested, and see 71 apparitions of comets that were given the great, quote-unquote, title. There's some notes, and they have some notes below for each comet, because, in history, comets were regarded very highly one way or the other, and it was pretty much consistently someone's job to pay attention to comets. I'm going to leave a link here to skylive.com for our comet that we're talking about being a great comet. It's named C/2019, the last comet discovered in 2019, Y4, parentheses, Atlas. And I just copied that. I'll put it in here. And that's a link to nope, that's not it. And see, sometimes I have that issue where I'm unable to grab the link for some reason because my keys aren't covering it. And SkyLive has some of the most comprehensive, up-to-date information about Comet C29Y4, and it gives you all sorts of available research sources to see where the position is, where is Comet C2019Y4 Atlas, the distance, how far is Comet Atlas from Earth, the rise and the set times, when does Comet Atlas rise and set, the current brightness, how bright it is, its orbital elements, which are the orbit that the comet is following. It will give you a representation so you can see interactive orbit visualization. That's a 3D visualization program, which really gives you a image of the solar system and the position of the comet, and you can move it much like a JPL orbital diagram, but you can get to those tools right through this skylive.com page. 15-day ephemeris, interactive sky chart, live position tracker. You can get all sorts of information from the skylive.com on C2019Y4. Just as a side note, C2019Y4 Atlas has something, there's another comet with a very close designation, C2019Y1 Atlas, and we have to right now make a firm designation that C2919Y4 Atlas is the comet that I'm speaking of, and not C2019Y1. I know that the other day when we were out imaging the comet, and again, I'll drop a link. Here's an image of the comet as we saw it. I don't know if I did that right. Definitely didn't. I'll give you a link to a picture that we took Monday. Yeah, I guess that, of the comet. Let's see if we get that out there again. And it shows you the Great Comet of 2020, C2019Y4 Atlas. And then we had another follow-up image taken the next evening. We had a couple images taken the next evening. And I'll send you a link to that because these are images to tell you that we are definitely following the passage of this comet. We're going to make sure that as well as we can, we are going to bring back to y'all our best representation of what this comet is doing when it's doing it. Because if it does become this great comet that I'm going out on a limb. So someone could easily ask me, well, Francis, why is this a great comet? I'm going to tell you that I'm calling it a great comet because I just feel like it's going to be a great comet. I have some wishful thinking behind it becoming a great comet. We have some observations and some articles and some news regarding the object with its potential brightness. We have physical properties of its location when it comes to perihelion with the sun, and then where it is when it is perihelion or close approach to Earth. Both of those numbers lie within one astronomical unit. My current number right now is that Comet Atlas, Y4 Atlas, will approach to about 72 million miles of Earth, which is, for a comet like this, close. What it takes, like I read earlier, for a couple of things to occur for a comet to become great. A comet isn't great until certain parameters are met. One parameter would be its perihelion, or close approach to the sun. Does it get close enough to the sun for the sun's atmosphere to interact with the comet and create the fine displays that great comets would display? And then the secondary circumstance would be, how close to Earth is this comet at the time all this is occurring? Of course, the farther away Earth would be, the less dramatic it would be. So we currently have a scenario where we have a comet moving into good position with the potential for becoming a great comet. Collision Course is just calling it the Great Comet of 2020. I have no reason not to call it a Great Comet of 2020. And so we're just going to move ahead. And then if it turns out to be something fantastic, and I just fell on it. I just, you have a 50-50 chance of calling something like this. Most of the time when I'm answering a 50-50 question, I'll get it wrong 75% of the time. So I guess it's a good time to say that. If this was a question 50-50, whether it's going to be great or not, I would have a 75% chance of getting that question wrong, so I could have it wrong. We've been fooled before with comets like Comet Ison. We've been fooled with comets like Haboyataki and even Comet Olenin. And I suppose that's why I'm very excited to watch this comet come in. I'm excited because we have tools to observe the comet, like I've shown you. Good evening, Lady Horse. Popping my eyes into the chat room. Remember, anyone who's listening to the show and not inside the chat room on freedomslips.com, I recommend you come into the chat room and share your opinion about Great Comet 2020, Comet Y4 Atlas. I've shown already some images from this past week of the comet that we've taken, I guess this is important to say, from the observatory, from our Cosmic Obsession Kerrville Observatory. If anyone didn't know, our show Collision Course and myself, Francis, is by family connected with a little observatory located in Kerrville, Texas, called Cosmic Obsession Kerrville. It's a wonderful roll-off roof observatory. It's got multiple telescopes. It's manned by my good friend and father-in-law, Bob Fitzhenry. And we have a good friend, Joe, from New Jersey, who also has telescopes inside the observatory, and he's able to observe with his telescopes robotically using internet access into the telescope room in Cosmic Obsession Kerrville. And actually, Joe's the one who took the picture of the green image, and Bob's the one who took the picture of the black and white images of Comet Atlas. So you can see that we have multiple amateur astronomers, and there's even more. NightSkiesNetwork.com. I'm going to always recommend that site, NightSkiesNetwork.com. Go over to there, and you can see what amateur astronomers are looking at through their telescopes, because they broadcast their stream right from their computers to your computers through NightSkiesNetwork.com platform. And that is brought to you by Joe, and Joe has his telescopes at Cosmic Obsession Kerrville, and very happy for that. Okay, our next thing, so we shared the Sky Live. If you're an astronomer, I recommend, or almost an astronomer, or want to feel like an astronomer, go to the Sky Live website to see the data as they update it. As far as the comet is concerned, I have here the close approach to Earth of Comet C 2019 Y4 is 0.781 AU. Astronomical units. Says 0.781 AU equates to 72,598,485,000 miles. 7,259,000. No, see, I got that wrong. 72,598,485 miles. I'm not that dumb, Rock. I just had to read it right. 72,598,485 miles from Earth, which brings it in close enough for if it really engages in activity, which is brightened up immensely quickly, we can expect a great show. There is something going on besides the froggy in my throat, which I don't have any symptoms. I just got a froggy in my throat right now. Something is going on, though, we have to talk about. Though, if we're going to talk about great comets, we're going to talk about great comets. And comets, besides becoming great, we have to look at the environment that they are flying in, and whether that environment makes a difference to how a comet comes to life. And I'm bringing this up because, if you don't know, currently our sun is in a very low activity cycle, coming out of solar cycle 24, the minimum solar cycle 24, into a solar maximum of solar 25. We're in a position with our sun where we don't know where it's heading. You can look at the sun today. I have a picture of the sun today. Here it is. And if you look at it, there's really no activity. We have what they call coronal holes at the north and south, but there is no sunspot activity. We're supposed to be moving into solar cycle 25. Yet there's nothing there. Nothing notable there. So I was thinking about this, and I was bringing the two topics together. I'm going a low active sun and a great comet. Do they mix? I don't know if anybody's spoken on this, and I can't really describe to you how much excellent knowledge I have on it, so I'm just going to make an observation from what I can observe. I know that sunspots and coronal mass ejections generate immense amounts of energy, magnetic fields, flux, plasma. That gets spit out into the solar neighborhood, including where Earth and all the planets are and where a comet may be. If you have any knowledge or followed comets in the past, you may have gone and saw images from the SOHO satellites of comets diving into the sun, the Kreutz family of comets, sun-grazing comets. They like to dive into the sun in SOHO. Where this picture of the sun came from, they have all sorts of different views. Let me give you this link. Here's a link where you can actually use SOHO data to hunt for comets and see sun-grazing comets. And right here I linked to the 15 years of SOHO comet observations. On December 2nd, 1995, the joint ESA-NASA Solar and Heliospheric Observatory was launched from Cape Canaveral, Florida, on a nominal 2-year mission to study the sun. Hopes are always high for such missions, but getting into space and keeping satellites healthy out there is not easy. But SOHO has survived countless particle storms, meteor showers, hardware malfunctions, software glitches, and even freezing almost solid while lost in space for several weeks. Go to that page, read the rest of the article. They have years and years of comet images that you can check in on. 2010, 2009, 2008, 2007, 2006, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, 0, 1999, 1998, and before. Really cool images of comets going around the sun, diving into the sun, etc., etc. But when I look at most of these videos, they like to add in the dramatic side of a lot of sun activity. So I'm curious if our low activity sun is going to be able to still work its magic on a comet like Comet Atlas. And then so I'm gonna go forward in that thought, and I'm gonna say, okay, if the sun, even at a low active period, is going to have enough space weather coming off of its surface to ignite a comet like Comet Atlas, then maybe Comet Atlas will have a better chance of survival. I'm not particularly sure. The distance that it's the closest approach to the sun is about close to the same as it is to Earth. Many of the comets that have disintegrated on their way into the sun have had perihelions that were closer than the multi-million mile perihelion comet Atlas will have. So that might be good for the comet, good for us, good for an opportunity to have this comet come in and have an opportunity to make it and produce a great comet. I'm going to touch on one more article because I wanted to read into it. Why has the sun gone quiet? Strange behavior may hide deeper meaning within our star. And so we're just going to cross two things, because I think it's important that the sun's not actually very active right now in the comets here. Solar observers have been on a wild ride over the past decade, painstakingly trying to make sense of our yellow dwarf star's increasingly puzzling sunspot cycles, or rather the lack of such cycles. The sun is supposed to follow 11-year cycles of minimum and maximum activity that should trace set patterns pretty much like clockwork, give or take weaker and stronger sunspot patterns, flares, and periods of coronal mass ejections. But solar cycle 24, which began in 2008, and the predictions for solar cycle 25, which will commence in 2020, take the cake for anomalous behavior. The sunspot maximum of cycle 24, which had began almost a year late, looks to be the smallest in 100 years, and the third in a trend of diminishing activity within sunspot cycles. So, cycle 25 likely could be smaller than cycle 24. Predicting a quiet future. The leading solar polar magnetic field indicator in use for solar cycle 25 shows that the next cycle will be similar to the current one, says astrophysicist Dean Presnell of NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Maryland. This indicator has been accurate for the last 4 cycles. Unfortunately, astronomers cannot accurately forecast the level of solar activity much past the next maximum, Presnell says. He notes that the internal process that recycles and amplifies the magnetic field still is not well understood. This peculiar solar behavior raises questions for astronomers. Does the previous cycle hint at what the sun has in store for the future? What can we expect for the next 2 or 3 solar cycles? Is Earth destined for a colder climate rather than a warmer climate? And could our idea about our own spectral type G2 star's peculiar midlife behavior need tweaking or even be flawed? Cycle 24 is one of the weakest sunspot and magnetic activity cycles in more than a century, says Edward Guinan, an astronomer at Villanova University. Cycle 24 and probably cycle 25 could be part of a suggested 100-year cycle that appears in the solar sunspot record known as the Gliesberg cycle. He says analysis of trends in magnetic field strengths does indicate that the upcoming sunspot minimum will be low, and cycle 25 will also be about the same or even at lower activity than the current one, says Guinan. Without a predictive theory for the solar dynamo, the physical process that generates the sun's magnetic fields, it isn't clear what we might expect for the next few cycles, says Mark Giampapa, Deputy Director of the National Solar Observatory, NSO, in Tucson, Arizona. Right now, the subsurface flow fields would seem to indicate that cycle 25 will be even weaker than the current cycle with fewer than 100 spots, he says. However, David Hathaway, an astrophysicist at NASA's Ames Research Center, says cycles tend to grow bigger and bigger over 5 to 6 cycles and then become smaller and smaller over the following 5 to 6 cycles. He notes that the sun is currently in a phase of declining activity. We learned that about them trying to postulate a 40 or so year cycle, a new cycle for the sun, for scientists to follow, potentially a 40-year cycle. What causes solar cycles? Solar cycles hinge on the creation of the sun's magnetic fields. Researchers think these fields are triggered by the star's internal differential rotation. the rotation of the solar atmosphere at different speeds, latitudes, and depths. The sun spins more slowly at the poles than at its equator. Twisting or turning these magnetic fields within the sun's photosphere, visible surface, may in turn play a role in generating sunspots. Astronomers believe solar magnetic fields are generated by dynamic flows of electrically conducting plasma in the sun's interior. This, in turn, generates electrical currents that create the sun's active dynamo, responsible for generating magnetic fields. Changes in differential rotation can weaken the solar dynamo, however, and if the dynamo is weakened enough, it can spiral into what is known as a grand minimum. The best known of these was the so-called Maunder minimum, a 70-year period of diminished solar activity from 1645 to 1715. During this time, observers often recorded no sunspots for years. These days, the sun is active, but unusual in its lack of sunspots. What could be causing this? Cycle 24 resembles Cycle 14 and 15 at the start of the 20th century, says Giampapa, and he notes that the real question may be this: what drove the preceding series of strong cycles that we refer to as the modern maximum, which is generally thought to have begun with Cycle 15 in 1914? Without a complete theory for the solar dynamo, it's difficult to know the actual driver for the weak sunspot cycles, he says. Throughout most of the 19th century, the number of sunspots tended to be a bit low, but from 1930 to 1990, the sun seemed a bit more active than usual. There are a myriad of ways to predict the strength of solar cycles, but most of them fail, says Sarbani Vasu, a Yale University astronomer. If some have just suggested the solar cycle strength is a chaotic phenomenon, then, of course, there really is no way to predict it. So there is a lot more into this article, but this show is actually about comets, not about the sun. I don't know if I left this link into the chat room. I'll leave that down. For the listeners, I am having to click off my mic for a moment to drink some water. I don't know what it is. I got a cough, not a cough. I've got a frog in my throat. You can probably hear it. So I'm trying to clear it. And when it gets bad, I'm going to click off my microphone and try to drink some water. So I try to get rid of that so that you're not hearing my throat so gargly. Because I know that besides it sounding gargly, it doesn't sound good. We gave you the link to the stargazing project, Sungrazer project of Soho. I recommend if you're really interested in hunting for new comets through Soho, or you're interested in looking at old comets that were captured by Soho, follow that sungrazer.nrl.navy.mil website, and they're going to take you where you want to go to learn more about what you can see with Soho and what Soho has already seen. I'm going to close a couple of these links that are in here, even the Maunder minimum. So we talked about there's a Maunder minimum that occurred between 1645 and 1715. I want to keep an eye on those dates, 1645 to 1715, because I want to see if we had any great comets during those Maunder minimum years, or if we were minus any great comets during those years. And let's see what I have over here. I have some information written down here, about great comets and their origins, great comet origins. It goes all the way back. This information goes back as far as 1066. There is, I can't throw it into this information, but there is an ancient Sumerian clay tablet that, of course, is written in cuneiform, and it describes an impact. One of the first astronomical observations of an object moving through the sky, but in this case, it had an impact. Maybe I'll cover that later when I bring that up. I don't have my phone with me, so I can't report it. But the Great Comet origins, actually it's not really modern time, began back all the way in 1066. And this is when civilizations were starting to make observations, in some of these more civilized times as we get through these times, because there's actually the discovery that I was talking about in Sumeria was a discovery back in 4000 BCE. We were still in the Stone and Bronze Age, and there were observations of celestial bodies moving through the sky. But when we want to talk about great comets, we have to think about scientific observations, and then those folks who are doing the observations actually putting the label of these comets either afterwards, during the time that they are present, or duly noted because of the importance of what was going on at the time. I will say at this point, because I haven't said it at any point into the show so far, some of my tendency to call this a great comet is because of the timing of what's going on in our environment and with humanity right now. This is something that you would call universal, this pandemic of COVID-19, the disease COVID-19. And so, we have recorded historical events where comets arrived during different times in history. And I think that I'm paying attention so much to it because this could be a comet for us, of our generation, of our pandemic, of our hurting times. And it definitely requires observation and duly noted so that we don't get too far along and try to come back and cover the bases later. So in 1066, if you didn't know, it was the Battle of Hastings. And there was a comet in the sky. You can see it on the Bayeux Tapestry. It's a 270-foot long tapestry that details the Battle of Hastings. Of course, it was created by the Normans, because it was representative of the invasion of Normandy over England. And that comet there, they are by record associating to Comet Halley. And again, Comet Halley makes multiple appearances in the Great Comet list. Over 20 or over appearances out of 71. Don Yeoman from JPL made a list of 71 recorded great comets. Great comets also, let's say, what makes a comet great? A comet, it all has to do with magnitude. Magnitude has everything to do with brightness. Okay, comet's not going to be great if it remains at magnitude 14, which it's about right now. Magnitude 14 requires a very nice tool, telescope, and a camera more than likely, yes, to see the comet, because you need a little exposure. And so at this point, it's not a great comet. We're only forecasting its appearance later on as a great comet. Comet Halley made an appearance multiple times throughout history during different periods of different civilizations' lives, and it could have been seen as important multiple times. 1066, Battle of Hastings. King died. I can't remember what king. King Harold of England died. I'm sorry, now I can remember. King Harold of England died at the Battle of Hastings. So for King Harold, the comet would look bad, but for the Normans, it probably looked pretty good. Right? 500 years later, in 1577, and also these are comets that appeared on record through art of some sort. The tapestry, the Bayeux Tapestry, the 270-foot long tapestry detailing the Battle of Hastings is art, and it has a comet there. And they have designated it as more than likely Comet Halley. 500 years later, in 1577, there's a woodcut drawing showing the passage of a comet over the city of Prague. In 1680, you have another, believe it's a woodcut art print showing a comet going over the city of Rotterdam. 1843, woodcut comet over Kent, England. 1882, South African comet, astronomical observatory. And I think we're getting close to the first actual image, because all those comets prior had to be put down in art. If you were to get an idea of what it looked like, it would show up in art. Back in the cuneiform days, the clay tablets had with their cuneiform printing. With cuneiform, the civilization, the Sumerians, the Babylonians were able to write trigonometry, maps of outer space, the stars, degrees, movement, very, 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 very detailed observations of objects moving through the sky. And so when I talk about, a tapestry and a woodcut and woodcut and woodcut, and then we have images, you have to imagine that thousands of years prior to this, there was a civilization doing detailed astronomical measurements and observations using trigonometry to forecast, or at least to track and record the movement of comets that they deemed to be important. And they deemed all of these types of objects as important. 1910, Halley, image from Peru. 1976, image of Comet West. 1996, images of Hyuutaki Ion's tail. Hyuutaki in 1996 had the longest ion tail on record. It was 550 million miles long. Comets have tails of two flavors, a dust tail and an ion tail. Dust tails normally show up first, and they are the material being stripped from the surface of the nucleus and then directed in such a way as the solar wind is driving it. But at the same time, that solar wind is charged, the particles are charged, and it interacts with the comet, creating an ion tail, which will be presented in a straight line off in a direction from the sun, opposite direction of the sun. 2011, Comet Lovejoy, a southern hemisphere. That was probably maybe the last great comet of all time, is Comet 2011 Lovejoy, seen only in the southern hemisphere. Images from Santiago, Chile show amazing sight of Lovejoy splayed across the sky. Don Yeoman's Great Comets of History. 22 will show you that 22 appearances of Halley mixed into the 71, so less than 50 great comets since recorded time, which goes all the way back to the year 00. Discussing some of the sun-grazing comets. Halley is shown up with the tail at times to be 100 degrees long, which you can imagine when you're looking at the sky. You've got 180 degrees. From one side, from east to west, is 180 degrees. So you can imagine a comet tail 100 degrees long. That's big. More than half the sky, 3/4 of a sky, a tail would be splayed across. Stability in question, because here's the next thing. Is it stable? Is Comet Atlas stable enough to make it? Because breakups happen all the time, and I don't want to break up. I look at the sun; it's not very active, so not worried about the sun being extreme on this comet. I'm looking at the orbits, and they are pretty good. They're within 1 AU, 72 million miles to Earth, and somewhere in that distance close to the sun too. its orbit brings it inside of Mercury's orbit. May 23rd. May 23rd is when it has its close approach to Earth, I think. May 23rd is close approach to Earth, and then May 31st is the close approach to the Sun. Stability in question. Breakups can occur. Breakups, we've seen Comet and Lennon. We've seen lots of comets do the breakup before they got great. The Kurtz family of comets are those sun-grazing, sun-diving brand of comets that you can see when you go into that Soho web pages and follow along. You can be a comet hunter yourself. More than likely, what you would find first would be a unknown sun-grazing, sun-diving comet that shows up in the imagery. 9 similar orbits, much larger, hundreds of years ago. 1843, 1882, 1965, 1970, and 2011. So what we're talking about is the frequency of comets, great comets. The statistics for great comets are 1 to 3 for every 100 years. Now, we can look back and we say that we got our share of comets, including Comet Halley, including Comet Lovejoy. For some viewers, it has been a good century, but for others, like for the Northern Hemisphere, it hasn't been so great, so wonderful. So it's good that this comet affords the opportunity for Northern Hemisphere viewers, that's us in North America and Canada and Upper Europe, to be able to witness this object if it does and when it does become great. Greatest comet. Let's not forget that this comet doesn't have to result in something that we can see during the day, though we're going to get there. At least we're going to talk about it. But we have to remember that if this comet at least gets to some magnitude around 6, and if you're in dark skies, you may be able to look up and see a tiny green dot up in the general area where we'll tell you to go look. Now, it may not be a great comet, but it may be the first comet you ever saw with your eyes, and because you may have never had a telescope. And we have to remember what makes a comet great. We have to remember that what makes a comet great, or what makes a comet great to me, or a great comet to you, or a great comet to someone else, because someone may be listening and they've already seen a fantastic comet. It's the comet that you see yourself that becomes the greatest comet. Because they're hard to see, they're hard to come by, they only come by once or twice. If you're able to see a comet, it somehow becomes your favorite. And so I'm hoping that Comet Atlas actually does brighten up in the sky and gives us a point where humanity can look up and say, that's my favorite great comet, Comet Atlas. There was an experience of one gentleman who was a student in Columbia. That's at 113th Street in Manhattan. He saw his first comet overhanging the Hudson, but he was looking at it, looking down 113th Street. That was his experience of the greatest comet that he had saw. Asteroids can look a lot like a comet, but they're not. And comets don't normally look like asteroids. Asteroids are rock with a little bit of ice. And a comet is ice with a little bit of rock. So occasionally we'll find an asteroid one here or there that may show off itself a little bit, like having a coma or an atmosphere or something, but more likely than not, an asteroid is an asteroid because it's more rock than ice, and a comet is a comet because it's more ice than rock. But in certain cases, asteroids can collide and present themselves to look very much like a comet. We have, in the past, seen this and taken images, and even Hubble has, because there's some things that have presented themselves in the night sky in quite a strange way. Objects with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different tails. But it was discovered through a lot of debate that more than likely it was just collisions of asteroids that created this great display. On the top of the hour, coming toward the second hour, we're going to be calling our good friend Michael from Red Deer, Canada, to see what his opinion is about the great Comet Atlas. We want to welcome everyone who may be the first time listening to the show. Welcome to Collision Course right here on freedomslips.com, Revolution Radio, every Sunday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. You can come to freedomslips.com and you can hear me talking about outer space. A lot of times we'll have interviews with great guests. A lot of times we will be right on top of the story as far as astronomy news. We are outreaching to our friends globally and locally. I want to say right now hello to Jack. Jack, I know that the telescope that we have sent to you is going to arrive either Monday or Tuesday. That is the word given to me by the missus, and she is in control of all the shipping. I want to tell the listeners who I owe the sci-fi novels to, I'm going to hand them and put them in her purse right after tonight's show to make sure that we get some books out to y'all. I know y'all have been waiting, and I apologize for the delay. Go back into the chat room and look at the other links. We have the images. Let's see, the latest image of the comet. And let me go back to it. We have one that I haven't shown you yet, and this would be the latest one. I think it was from last night. Our latest image. Again, this was from a good friend, Joe, who got us this image, the latest image from last night of Comet Atlas. Has more of a blue tone to it. And I'm going to come over here. I'm having to use so many browsers to get my my stuff done, because the chat room I have to have in one browser, and then my other stuff I'm going to be putting in the other browser. So I want to make sure that I get everything good. I'm going to pop back in here as we're going to the top of the hour. Death Star, how are you? Popsicle Toes, how are you? Crab Cake, Captain Fred, Francis is in there too. Jimmy Jean, Popsicle Toes, Captain Fred, Death Star, Mr. Rowe. I hope everyone's doing fine. We'll go over to Collision Course, because I know I have a lot of friends listening over on Collision Course. Mike, Jay-Z, Jessica, I hope you all are doing fine. Shannon, Rob, I want all my listeners to know that we're thinking about them. We hope that everyone is doing as best they can, maintaining a safe distance for health and wellness, and that together we're going to far exceed what we need to do to make it safe for everyone to enter into the new civilization after this goes by. Let's just go in here, and I'm just going to say, hello, Mbunte. I cannot forget Mbunte, Roland in Cameroon. If you're listening right now, Roland, I hope that you are doing well. I hope that you are paying attention a little bit to what we're doing with the telescopes these days. Jessica Mills, Midori, Jean-Pierre, Jack, Stephen, Richard, Sheila, Kelly, I hope you all are doing fine. Alice, James, Linda, Candy, Paula, Orlando, Teresa, Delbert, David, Regina, Luis, Daryl, Ellie, William, Shannon, Tracy, Gabriel, Robert, Natalie, Adrian, Guy, Rux, Simon, La, Rita, Gelazio, William, Helen, Roger, Dale, Betty, Cheryl, Ryan, James, Corey, Ruth, Rick, David, Gustavo, Edwin. I could see more and say more, but I want everyone to know that we're thinking about you. We thank you for liking the posts on Collision Course 321 on Facebook. Facebook has the Collision Course information page where we share links and talk to our friends over on Facebook. That is facebook.com/Collision Course 321. We really hope that everyone is getting some enjoyment out of our space news. I know for myself that every time I turn on the TV, it's saying something I don't want to hear. I don't get to hear enough about what I want to hear about. So I hope that on Sundays you can come to freedomslips.com and Revolution Radio and listen to some outer space news that you can enjoy and you can meditate on and get some news at the same time, because there isn't a lot of outlets for outer space news, and the news we're bringing you, I feel, is very important considering what's going to be happening over the next 60 days or so. I really think that Comet Atlas deserves another hour. And on the other side of this break, we're going to talk to Michael from Dark Flame Earth, Red Deer Canada, and see what he's been up to with his Neo Watch group over on Facebook. And so we'll see you on the other break. This is Francis with another episode of Collision Course on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
Mr. Rowe. I am the host of Reality Extraction on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I utilize logic, intellect, and magic to methodically atomize, vivisect, analyze, examine, study, scrutinize, and extract an essence of reality from a fog of illusion and confusion. You can find me on Studio B every Thursday at 1700 hours Pacific Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern. No topic taboo, no subject too strange. I strive to take a neutral standpoint during the dissection of the topic at hand. That's Reality Extraction with Mr. Rowe on Revolution Radio.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Transcending time and space, let us take you to the place inside your mind where thoughts divide and mysteries unwind. Join us every Monday evening right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And you will catch the Fenton Perspective with our great host, Lorian Fenton. Come listen in as she shares her amazing stories from the past to present, along with all of her guest secrets to the future. That's the Fenton Perspective every Monday evening right here from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, only on Revolution Radio. Oh, and you don't need to expect us. We're already here.
anarcho-syndicalist commune. We take it in turns to act as a sort of executive officer for the week. Yes. But all the decisions of that officer have to be ratified at a special bi-weekly meeting. Yes, I see. By a civil majority in the case of purely internal affairs. Be quiet. But by a 2/3 majority in the case of more... Be quiet. I order you to be quiet. Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left. Yes, I have. Look! Just a flesh wound.
I don't believe I've seen such a display of courage, skill, nerve, grace, and stupidity.
I'll do you for that. Oh, what? Come here. What are you going to do, bleed on me? I'm invincible. You're a loony. The Black Knight always triumphs.
Roundtable Live, Monday through Friday, 1 a.m. till 4 a.m. Eastern Time. Bring your mind, bring your ideas, bring your voice. King Arthur had nothing on us here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Thanks for listening while we take that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
Good evening, everyone. Second hour collision course right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com with your host, Francis. Clear skies, everyone. It's Francis, your host of Collision Course right here on freedomslips.com at Revolution Radio. Every Sunday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, you'll join me, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's going on in our solar neighborhood, though. It's not just that. We're on a mission to uncover and discover the truth about our place in the universe. Come listen for some interviews. Come listen to me. Either way, we'll know more so we can decide what's real and what is not in the space outside our atmosphere. Welcome back to the second hour of Collision Course on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. The world's number one listener-supported radio station. If you are listening to me and you're not or have not visited freedomslips.com, I recommend you do. I request that you do. Please visit freedomslips.com. Find a donate button and help support a champion of free speech. The world's number one listener-supported radio station needs your support to continue operating, to continue giving you the topics that you love to hear from people who love to talk about the topics that they love. In my case, every Sunday you'll come here and we'll talk about outer space. Tonight we're talking about comets. Tonight we're talking about a particular comet, Comet Atlas. It's in the northern sky. You say, well, what does that mean? I guess I can give you a general description of where it is in the sky right now. If you know where north is, imagine yourself outside at night looking north. If you know where north is at night, looking out in the night sky, you might probably know where Polaris is located. Polaris, if you're a northern observer, a northern hemisphere observer, I must add that. If you're below the equator, it's going to be different. You might not be able to have the same views that the observers above the equator have. So if we're above the equator and we're out at night on a clear night and we're looking north at Polaris, let's imagine Polaris as the center of a clock. And right now, Comet Atlas is located about 12 o'clock. So if we wanted to do a little bit closer, and I wanted to use degrees, if you were to hold your arm out straight and make a fist and sit the bottom of your fist on Polaris where 12 o'clock is, the comet would be somewhere around the top of your fist in that general area. So you can imagine out at night looking at Polaris, the North Star, put your fist out. Sitting on top of your fist is going to be Atlas. And Atlas is going to move counterclockwise. From that location, around 12 to 11 to 10 to 9 to 8 to 7, and so forth, on its way to the sun. That's a quick description. Now I'm going to try to bring in my good friend Michael. Let's see if he's available. I'm here. I'm just trying to make the connection. Beep, boo, boo, beep, boo. I hope I got the right number. I always am worried. So it always seems that people have more than one Skype contact. And here we have Hey, good evening, everyone. Michael has joined us from Red Deer, Canada. Michael, good evening. How are you, sir?
I'm excellent. How are you tonight?
I'm doing wonderful. We're talking about Comet Atlas. You know that comet that's in the sky right now that may get to be something great, according to how I'm reporting. I'll tell you, Michael, I'm reporting it as it's going to be a great comet, but I only do that with wishful thinking, but I'm going to stay on top of it.
Well, I've heard that it's going to be comparable to Comet Hale-Bopp, and I was pretty young when that came by, but it was the bright comet of the decade.
Yeah,
so I'm really looking forward to the next 2 months and seeing it get closer and closer.
Do you have any? Do you happen to have any telescopes in Red Deer with you? Just out of a question.
I don't, but I've been looking at a couple different telescopes. I don't think I'm going to need one, though. Apparently, we're going to be able to see Comet Atlas with our eyes, or even with some binoculars, which I should be able to get a hold of.
Right. That's a great point. I was just reading that even right around now, we're getting pretty close to where a nice, a pair of binoculars pointed in the right location, you may be able to draw Comet Atlas out, and definitely over the next 60 days is going to become really amazing. And like you said, if it does what I say it's going to do, it's going to get as bright as Venus, which is extremely bright. And then it might even get as bright or bright enough to see during the day. And since I've been onto this topic, I started reading some historical descriptions of these comets that are so bright you can see them during the day.
Well, that would be quite the spectacle. I mean, they're saying that the atmosphere of Atlas is potentially as big as the sun. Not the comet itself, but the atmosphere surrounding it. And one of my friends even mentioned that there might be, the potential for some panspermia, that things from the atmosphere of this comet might interact with us. And that's very interesting. Now, it's going to be, when it's close, which appears to be May 24th, 2020, it's still going to be over 100 million kilometers away. So I don't think we're at any risk of it coming into our atmosphere, or even within the distance of the Earth to the Moon, the lunar distance. But we're definitely going to see it. It's going to be bright in the sky. It's green, and I still don't know how big it is. Do you have any input on the actual physical magnitude of this?
I'll tell you, I searched a number of times in a number of ways, and I'm a good searcher to try to determine what they were saying about the size. I couldn't, on my recent search, get an answer, but I think I remember something in the 4 kilometer. I remember reading something that we're talking about something in the 4 kilometer. But again, I have to confirm that. That's not fully vetted, then that's just from memory. But when I made the actual search to try to discover the size of it, I couldn't find the actual size of it. So, but I did hear that the atmosphere, or the coma, the comet's nucleus will produce a coma around the nucleus, and then you'll have the tail. So you actually have two different dynamic parts of the comet, or 3. You have the nucleus, which is the actual physical body of the comet. You have the environment around that nucleus, which is called the coma. And Michael reported that coma could be as large as the sun. And then you'll have the dust, and then eventually the ion tail that will be produced the closer it gets to the sun. Now, I was discussing earlier in the show, Michael, that I was thinking about how inactive the sun is, and whether that was going to actually play a part in any of this, whether for the good of the benefit or for the bad of the benefit. But between you, me, and the next guy, we also have to admit that the sun doesn't have a whole lot of activity. So we can, I don't know what to assume out of that. I don't know if the environment in our solar system is calmer than it might be if we were at a solar maximum. And so, I have a little question about, does the sun actually play a part in what's going to happen with the comet? And I guess we'll have to wait and see. I'll tell you what, I've followed a bunch of comets that broke apart and didn't become anything. So I really would like this comet to pull through and be the comet that I want to see.
Well, I suspect it's probably not going to dive into the sun. The orbit, that at least what's projected in the model, appears that it's not going to come quite that close. But as it approaches, we're going to see the tail, of course, and as it heats up towards the sun, it's going to probably break apart. I mean, who knows? The orbit could change a little bit. It could end up diving into the sun, or at least disintegrating as it goes around. But I would say that we're definitely going to see some interaction with the sun. Today, just in preparation for this call, I looked at the SolarSoft, and we've had 7 flares today, just small ones, A-class flares. The largest was an A2.9, which is very small. The orders of magnitude are 100 times. So a B is 100 times bigger than an A C is 100 times bigger than a B, and then, of course, the M flares and the X flares are really the only ones we need to worry about. But there is an active region coming around the sun. It's going to be Earth-facing over the next few weeks, and we're leaving solar minimum. You know, it's about a 7-year cycle, and I was lucky enough to learn about all this on the way to the last solar maximum, which was in around 2012, 2013, and we're now leaving solar minimum. So we're going to see increased solar activity all the way through 2025. We'll have to see when the maximum is, but as this comet approaches the sun, there could be some interplay. And like I say, as the comet warms up, we're going to see that tail, which of course faces away from, or is it facing away from the sun or facing towards it? I forget. But eventually we're going to we're going to see it break apart. The mass of it will probably change as it goes around the sun, depending on what all the materials are on it. The colors could change. It could go a little bit more blue or a little bit more, like right now we see it as green. So we'll just have to see. I'm really excited to make some observations and to look up into the sky and see it there. This is going to be something that everybody's going to see, assuming that they look up.
Well, we hope through our reporting that more people will look up than not look up. And I know that I'm sharing the information to anybody that comes up and wants to interact with me. I have videos I made this week. I was out with the telescope and I was looking at my camera, and lo and behold, my neighbor walks up behind me and we just start talking about outer space, and I tell him about the comet. So any opportunity I get, and I'm sure that you are the same now too, is that people need to know what's out there so that they can see it too. And what a better time is when we're all at home and we don't have much to do, is maybe once in a while go out over the next 60 days, look out into the northern sky, depending on when you look, around Polaris, and we're going to eventually draw this comet out of the night sky. Now, it's interesting that you've been staying on top of the sun because, honestly, the sun is, I know of the effects of the sun, but I don't really go into its details on a daily record. So you just reported to us that we've had some small flares, which is good, because when I looked at the picture from Soho today, it just looked like it was, just not dead, but it was just inactive. Well, and so, okay, this is what I was going to say. I remember in some of my earlier interactions with comets, we were really interested to see as if the comet actually created, or if the sun and the comet were interacting in a way that the sun was actually activated by the comet. I remember there was that discussion. And so this, I guess, would be an interesting time to watch that interplay of comet and sun and see if not all of a sudden, but over the next 60 days, the sun starts to get really active, and then we can all postulate whether the comet had anything to do with it.
Well, I will definitely be watching to see if we have increased activity, as well as, of course, the interaction between the sun and the Earth. I'm always paying attention, and sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'll check the magnetosphere graph. Of course, we have an instrument around the sun that measures the magnetics between the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun. And sometimes we get, waves of energy hit the planet, and I just seem to wake up in the middle of the night, and that seems to be what has happened. So I think some of us are sensitive to that, and it's not really a theory that people are sensitive to those sorts of energies, but I find it fascinating that it's something that I'm attuned to. And after studying the sun and watching these things for so many years, I'm just fascinated by it. I'm very curious to see if there's any interplay with this comet. Like we said, was it the chroma? The chrome? What do you call it?
The coma.
The coma, yes.
The coma around the nucleus.
Yeah, so it would be very interesting to see if that entering the inner solar system is going to affect the sun. And like I said, they're just small ones today, just A-class flares. So very small, very minimal. But as this spot comes around and is Earth facing, we'll see if it continues to spit out these coronal mass ejections. And if we get any B-class or C-class over the next month, that is an indication that there may possibly be some interaction. Now, of course, over the last year, we've talked quite a bit about some of these objects, and you know that I've been digging a little bit deeper into all of these objects, the near-Earth objects. There's so many things out there, and this one was only discovered a few months ago. We barely saw this one coming and had any time to really react. So we do have to get the word out. This isn't something that people have known about for a long time. This is a relatively new discovery. But there are so many objects that are out there, and we have been trying to keep track of these and at least, pay attention to what's coming up. Next month, around the 22nd of April, we have a big comet. It could be, between, 1,800 meters, like 1.8 kilometers, and up to maybe 4 kilometers big. Now, it's not going to come that close, but it's big. And these big ones concern me because there could be other objects traveling with it. And, what hits our atmosphere? Where does it come from? We don't have nearly enough information about these things. And so just having the conversation and raising awareness about these objects, I think is so important.
I'm just interacting a little bit on the chat room. In the kitchen, hi, how are you in the kitchen? Comet coma. It is a comet coma. It is the coma. It is the coma and the tail. It's the coma is the environment around the nucleus. I was thinking a corona coma. But no, let's step away from the corona and get into the coma. And that would be the environment around the nucleus as the sun heats it up and strips it of, again, comet is ice with a little bit of rock. Asteroid is a rock with a little bit of ice. And Michael and I both share the same interest in these objects, and we've been sharing these interests for over a decade. For what reasons I do not know. Apparently, there is a time frame at which a lot of us got into this discussion or got into the research or got interested in it. Now, maybe those who are younger or those who are older are a little bit different, but it appears somewhere around the year 2010, maybe it's the appearance of Facebook, maybe it's the appearance of full-blown information overload that created the scenario where many of us got into the topics that we're still talking about today. Today we're still talking about astronomy. Today we're still talking about objects that come and go. Our big interests are in transient objects. I call them transient. If you think of a transient, you're not quite sure where it's going or where it's coming from. Most of the objects we talk about, we know where they came from and we know where they're going, but they're still moving around the inner solar system without any regularities, when you put them all together. Again, we talked earlier in the show how Comet Halley has made 22 appearances out of the 71 great comet recordings of history. And so you'll see how finite the dispersion is. Honestly, we only have so many, unique great comets. And now the only problem with this, and I guess this is important to note, very important to note, this comet, Comet Atlas, is following in a path which is very, very similar to the Great Comet of 1844. Did you know that, Michael?
I did hear that. And, the last pass we're assuming is somewhere around 3000 BC. And we don't really have any records. I tried looking and seeing, but it's very early Egyptian civilization. There's not a whole lot of information about comets going that far back, but China does have some records that go back several hundred years. They've documented some comets, but this was here once. We don't know who saw it, but it's here right now, and it won't be back again for a long time.
Well, yeah, because they say it has an orbit. Now, again, this is another one of those things where, depending on where you read it, there are some different, some different denunciations of the orbit. I've read an orbit of 4,400 years. I've read an orbit of something else, but the orbit I'm most comfortable with is the 6,025-year orbit. That's the one that still is listed on the JPL information, is that it's got 6,025 years to go around. So that would place us back somewhere around 4,000 BCE. We're talking about the Bronze Age. I did a little bit of research. There's nothing that really stuck out to me. When I did go that far back in looking for some reports on comets, what I came up was a clay tablet, cuneiform tablet from Babylonia, which was reporting on the impact of an asteroid somewhere around Africa, North Africa, which we may get into later on. A very interesting story where there are these very detailed observations of this object that struck in the Middle East region and are detailed on a clay tablet from Samaria. If I had my phone, I'd be able to give you the number, but I don't have it.
Curious if you can send me that after the show. I'd be very interested to look into that, because I've been researching ancient history and I've been discovering all sorts of things about the Sumerian timeline. And it's these tablets that most of them haven't even been translated yet. If you didn't know and you looked at it, you'd just think that it was a bunch of random etchings. But There is detailed information, and it's thanks to a couple different artifacts that had multiple languages on it. One of them is on a wall it's like a mountain, essentially. 3 different languages. You have the Akkadian, Sumerian, and this allowed us to translate a whole bunch of these tablets that have all sorts of information. So as we dive deeper into this mystery, I would love to find out which tablet you're referring to, and maybe we can find a little bit more.
I have it right here. It's the Sumerian K8538 tablet. Hold on one second. The Sumerian K8538 tablet, the great meteor impact devastating Mesopotamia. The K8538 is the world's first scientific documentation on approach and terrestrial impact of a large comet on Earth. Observations were made on top of an astronomical tower located 100 kilometers close to the impact site. The report is presented in form of a sequence of 8 pictures explaining the comet's first astronomical sightings. And see, this was the tablet I was talking about earlier in the show. This tablet has trigonometry. It has, it has everything involved, stars and everything. The appearance of the comet tail, the coma, the growing comet size, the comet flight across the sky, and finally its visible impact beyond the horizon, i.e. the impact flash lighting of the sky and the subsequent elevation of ash plumes glowing beyond the horizon, spreading north and west. The impact itself is not described as a blast pressure wave, but rather as an ash and dust tempest rising out of mud sediments from the Tigris and Euphrates River Delta. The K8538 tablet had high priority in Babylonian times because it provided the documented evidence that the comet emerged out of the constellation Triangulum. And that's pretty funny. Triangulum was exactly where the Taurid swarm was coming from. Interesting to note that.
There we go. Found it. That is fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a real tablet, and it supposedly details an actual event. And the way the information on the tablet is amazing in detail, trigonometry, angles, dates, and position of the object as it was moving across the sky, and then eventually to come and impact Earth. And I've never heard about this object before until just finding this information from my searches over great comets. And I'll read at the end. It says, for this reason, the K8538 was guarded, copied, and refreshed over more than 1,500 years until the late Babylonian period after the observed meteor impact in 2193 BC. The tablet does not deal with any Babylonian zodiacal astrology. The described cosmic impact on Earth is the so-called 4.2 KYR event shown in our other Holocene climate change studies. The comet impact is responsible for a 300-year-long drop in global temperatures combined with lasting mega droughts, which led to the collapse of various ancient civilizations around the world. Interesting stuff.
Wow.
That was posted from ResearchGate, April 2014, the Sumerian K8538 tablet, the great meteor impact devastating Mesopotamia.
Wow, that's kind of what I was looking for last night. So I am learning new things, even talking with you right now. That's fascinating.
And that's the best thing. That is all that's all we can ask for, is having a show like this, and then having people learn a little bit about what's going on. And in our case, I'm trying to, yep, I did. I got that. There's the information, everyone. I shared the link to that ResearchGate page. It doesn't have the actual paper, like they don't. But says it is available. ResearchGate is a place. I love ResearchGate because they are a warehouse of a lot of data, and you can have access to it, but you have to have the right credentials to get an account and be able to access all the wonderful PDFs that are inside ResearchGate. I've already tried once to get access and they kicked it out, so I may go back and try to find another way to get access into ResearchGate. But ResearchGate is a great place for wonderful information. And in this case, they are holding this data about this K8538. And I know that Michael will be doing some research on that, so we'll probably come back and bring him back a little bit more about that topic. Because that comet impact doesn't have much to do with our comet in the sky right now. Michael talked a little bit, or said the word panspermia, which we've been actually talking about a lot lately, because, you know, we talked with Dr. Chandra Wickramasinghe, who, if you look back historically, has had a lot to say about the topic of panspermia, has had a lot to say on the topic of objects like asteroids and comets bringing in viroids and microbes into Earth's atmosphere, into the environment that we eventually interact with. Dr. Chandra has a belief when it comes to Darwinism that is neo-Darwinism, that as far as true Darwinism and in the strongest survive, it may not exactly be 100% that way when we talk about panspermia having an effect on the evolution of humans. And we can look at our current situation a little bit, though we don't want to, and say that this current situation is evolving us. Those who become affected will, on the other side, be forever changed, i.e. evolved. And I suppose the stronger of us will survive, but we are actually being evolved through means that may have, in the past, present, or future, come from in the space outside our atmosphere. So here we have a great Comet Atlas, which has been described as having a coma that may be the size of the sun right now. Now, currently, it's just coming up on the orbit of Mars. And this is where the activity really gets kicking. Most comets outside of Mars, they present themselves, but once the comet gets inside of Mars's orbit, that's when things really start happening. That's when the space environment, the space weather from the sun can really start warming up a comet. So from these next few days, This is March 29th. So let's say until April 14th. We have a good chance to, by the time we get to the 14th, having an object that we can see in the night sky with our naked eyes. And that would be a very optimistic view. It would be inside of Mars's orbit. Maybe we'll have a sunspot coming around and produce more energy on it. And then if we wanted to think, let's see if I can put a picture in our head of where Earth is, where the sun is, and where the comet is, and how we're all moving. If we were Earth, or you were Earth, or we were Earth, and we're sitting down or standing up or wherever we are, and we're closing our eyes, and we imagine the sun right ahead of us, straight ahead of us. So we're Earth, and the sun straight ahead of us. Comet Atlas is over our right shoulder, but behind us, out where Mars is. And it's making its way in. It's above us, out where Mars is, higher than our orbital plane, out where Mars is, coming in toward the sun, which is in front of us. Now, as it comes in over the next 2 months, we're going to move to our right, because that's the way we're moving. Yes, moving to our right, around the sun, and the comet's coming in closer. Now, the comet comes in to the sun before we actually get around. So we're not in any real danger of an intersection, but potentially what if the comet's coming in and it has some sort of disturbance in between Mars and Earth's orbit, and somewhere in that general area, then we'd have to see if there were any scenarios where that environment or that coma or whatever happened to the comet in that general direction, if there's going to be any interaction with Earth. Because we are in a semi-vulnerable zone, or a semi-zone where the movement of Earth around the sun and the movement of the comet bring us together. We'll have to pay attention to it. I don't really forecast any breaking up between Mars and Earth. I don't see that at all. I am intrigued by the fact that it comes within Venus's, Mercury's orbit, gets spit back around. So, do you have any other thoughts on this comet, or any other thing that's been keeping you up at night, Michael?
Well, I'm really excited to see this comet in the sky. I think it's going to be a once-in-a-lifetime thing. I think people who don't really think about outer space very much, they're going to get a chance to look up, and it's going to inspire them to be more curious about, the world we live in and what's out there in outer space. And I think that this is just going to be a very inspirational event. So the more we can discuss this over the coming weeks, and new information, and let's discover all that we can about what this is made of, how big it is, when the best times to look up will be, so that we can get lots of people looking at this, and hopefully that will inspire people at a time when maybe they're a little bit stressed out about normal life. This will be something that's out of this world that they can focus on.
Yeah, and fortunately for us in the Northern Hemisphere, we really have it's an easy target. It's not a hard target. A lot of times comets will present themselves. Okay, let's talk about that. There's two different types of comets. There's short period comets and there's long period comets. This comet that we're talking about is a long period comet. Short period comets are comets that reside somewhere around the area of Neptune, and are called and located in what's known as the Kuiper Belt. And there's a lot of differences between short period comets and long period comets, but there's something important to have a quick discussion on. Short period comets tend to have orbits that are near the orbital plane of the rest of the solar system, because they've been in position and have been drawn into their orbits over a period of time. And so these short period comets that comes from the Kuiper Belt tend to have orbits that are closer to the plane of the other planets. And when we talk about long period comets, they tend to have more of an inclined orbital trajectory, which is, way off of, as we circle around the sun on our flat plate, these long period comets will come in, way high and go way low, or from way low and go way high, or just come in these really inclined orbits. What's interesting to know, the long period comets are basically coming from an area which is described as the Oort cloud. Now, again, the Oort cloud has not been proven, or maybe never be proven, because we can't see anything that is located in the Oort cloud. We only see the things that maybe have been located in the Oort cloud when they come into our inner solar system, like Comet Atlas, with an orbit of 6,025 years. The short period comets that come around Neptune have shorter orbital paths. Now, what's interesting, and I found out about comets, is now every time a comet comes around the sun, it loses something. It loses a percentage of itself. And so, how do we have short period comets? Our solar system has been in business for billions of years, 4.55 billions of years. So you can imagine these short period comets have made many passes around the sun, and eventually they'll be gone. And so why are there any short period comets at all? Well, the answer is that there's a resupply. And they're resupplied by the Oort cloud. Comets will eventually get perturbed from the farthest reaches. Now, Neptune and the Kuiper belt are somewhere in the 30 astronomical units from the sun. So that's 30 times 93 million miles. That's how far it would be, Kuiper belt. But when we talk about the Oort cloud, we're talking about 50,000 AU, up to 50,000 AU. And now, very interesting that we have a resupply of our short period comets occurring at the same time as we have these long period comets like Comet Atlas appearing. And what's interesting, and not what's so interesting, what's fortuitous is that as these long period comets spend a long period of time out in their cold environs, they are more apt to generate more activity once their sublimation begins because of the environment that the sun is producing. Once they get inside of Mars's orbit and into Earth's area, and then into Venus's area, and then farther and farther into perihelion. It's a good thing, though, Michael, isn't it? Do you, when you think about the comet and you think about our current condition, is it like, do you get that, that guilty feeling like we're, I don't know, we're exploiting the comet when we should be looking at it as a bad thing?
I think that people will look up at the sky and depending on what they believe, whether they're fearful or whether they're optimistic, it's going to mean a lot of different things. And I can only guess at what people in ancient civilizations thought when they looked up and they saw these beautiful things up in the sky. But I think that we should be as objective as we can. I think it's amazing that one of these comets even makes it through the Oort cloud. If aliens were to try to visit us, they might not even know there's anything inside this ball of dust. From the outside looking in, does our sun even shine through the Oort cloud? There's so many mysteries, and I don't think we'll ever find out unless we're able to escape the I guess, gravity of the sun. This self-contained system of energy. It takes so much energy just to break free of orbit from the Earth. But if we didn't have continual propulsion, we would just fall back, to the gravity of the Earth or to the gravity of the sun. And it's amazing that, the velocity of this comet is able to whip around the sun and go far out, and then it's pulled back in. I just find all of it fascinating.
Well, it's interesting, too, that they are speaking of it's maybe having an association with the Great Comet, another Great Comet, because you and I both had over the summer discussions about multiple objects generated by a single object. The Taurid meteor swarm of 2P Encke. I wish I knew. I did read what the name. Well, I'm not sure if there is a name. Well, I'll have to come back because I'll have to determine whether there is a proper designation of the Great Comet of 1844 or not. And then we'd have to look if they're going to be somehow making an association between this Great Comet of 1844. Then that would actually make this comet the same designation as the Comet of 1844. I'm going to make a quick search. Designation of Great Comet 1844. It was in 1844.
And if they're following the same path, does that mean that they're interacting?
Say that again. You broke up a little bit.
If both of these comets are following basically the same path, does that mean they are interacting?
Well, from our summer's research how you can have, multiple objects following in the same orbital path, one being a main object, like there could be a main big object, and then there could be multiple little objects, and then there could be multiple minute objects, which literally cluster in formation due to the gravitational perturbations of other bodies. But, in these comets, well, let's see, 2P Encke is a different kind of comet. 2P Encke for us is one of these short period comets, 3.3 year orbit. Comet 2P Encke has. This is a 6,000 year orbit. So I don't see, I can't imagine like this comet, then another one, then another one, then another one, because that's kind of what we're talking about. Is this comet a piece of another one, of another one, of another one? Are we going to, or do we have a potential of maybe we're going to get a one after another after another? That'd be an interesting event for sure, because that would probably be something that never happened before. No, we can remember when Comet Wassermann-Schwarzman dove into Jupiter, broke up into a bunch of pieces. I can remember seeing the piece by piece by piece, the pearl necklace of cometary pieces as they crashed into Jupiter. And then, but right now we just have to look at Comet Atlas as one piece. I tried to look up how big it was today. I was unable to grab an answer. I believe I read an article earlier that said it was in the 4 kilometer size, but it's not been vetted. We have to be sure. The bigger the object, Pardon?
Right now, all we have is the apparent magnitude, as it's still so far away. But hopefully, as it gets closer and over the next month and a half or 2 months, we're going to get a more accurate view of the size of this thing.
Yeah, for sure. And hopefully everything about it will be surprising. But like I said earlier, I'll tell the listeners, for as much if it seems like I'm enjoying this, I am enjoying this because of being an amateur astronomer, looking forward to seeing a comet, because honestly, in my history, I don't have a record of seeing a great type comet or seeing a comet in the sky for myself. So if this is going to be a great comet, that's good for me. Okay, and I was going to say earlier, just like in the Battle of Hastings, in the Bayeux Tapestry, for the Normans, the comet was a good thing, but for King Harold, the comet was a bad thing because he died. So depending on our perspective, our outlook, and probably what's going on in our life individually, will each individually make a designation of where this comet fits. Was it the good omen of a good future to come? Was it a bad omen? Because, it'd be easy to call a bad omen at this time, but maybe that we just look at it as individuals and let that determine where we're at. And then maybe we can come back later on as it's really, really going on, or after it's all done, and we'll collect everybody's, whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. And then we can look at the data and we can put the real marker on whether it was a good, great comet or a bad, great comet.
Well, I'm going to say it's going to be a great comet. Like you said, it's not really going to pose much of a threat to Earth, but it's 100 million miles away. We're going to have a great view of it, and it's going to get bigger and bigger as we move towards it in May, and it goes around the sun. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to talking more about this comet as well as many other objects. I'm going to have to jump off the call, but I really appreciate you bringing me on for the show today. And,
no problem, Michael. No problem. Dark Flame Earth, all the time, all the way.
Hey, thank you so much. Bye for now.
Bye. Bye, Michael. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Collision Course. Michael from Red Deer, Canada. He is like I am interested in all these objects. He's going to be able to bring a little bit of a different view, a little twist, unique. He follows some other topics and looks at some other data that I don't pay attention to as much. We're really getting into paying attention to the comet, but we're doing a lot of astronomy outreach. We're really working with a lot of individuals to try to bring astronomy to as many places as I can possibly reach and Collision Course can reach, whether it be through listeners of Collision Course, the radio show on Revolution Radio at freedomsits.com every Sunday between 8 and 10 p.m. Eastern Time. We're doing outreach by telling the listeners what we are interested in the space outside our atmosphere. During the week, we may have a session of telescoping. At the same time, it's a simulcast telescope astronomy, driveway astronomy, as we did this week. Pulled the telescope out in the driveway, and I did driveway astronomy. At the same time, astronomy was being done at Cosmic Obsession Kerrville. Bob and Joe were taking pictures of Comet Atlas, as well as they were taking pictures of others. It's galaxy season now. As the summer approaches, it's galaxy season for Cosmic Obsession Kerrville. If you have a Facebook, that's Cosmic Obsession Kerrville /Cosmic Obsession Kerrville. We have a website, Cosmic Obsession, but it's really, the Facebook really has a lot of the information and the pictures. I try to bring some here to you, and they're really, really fabulous. We brought the comet pictures tonight. I will follow up with some of the galaxies as we enter galaxy season, and we continue to image on every clear night possible. We're going to be bringing back simulcast. When I get more comfortable with my telescope and I'm able to take images using a camera, the Orion Starshoot Guider camera, that may be mono, but I hope to be broadcasting live on the nightskiesnetwork.com soon over the next month or so. When that happens, if it's clear on a Sunday night, we can do simulcast. And then we can attempt to do some simulcast with Joe and Bob from Cosmic Obsession Kerrville. So there's something to look forward to, is we're going to basically be doing the show and then giving you the link to nightskiesnetwork.com, where you can go to nightskiesnetwork.com, listen to what's going on in the chat room over there while you're looking at what we're looking at with the telescopes. Those are always great events. We normally did them when something special was going on. We can do them with the comet. We can do a simulcast live stream with the comet, and that would be really great. The next 14 days, as far as the comet goes, it'll be the 14 days that we're going to pay attention to, each and every one. We're going to see if it continues to get brighter. We're going to continue to manage its location, coordinates, and any post links, updates that we get from our friends. There's a lot of people now on the tail of Comet Atlas. We won't be the only one, but we like to think we were one of the first ones who tagged the name Great Comet of 2020 onto this comet. And we hope that it follows through and doesn't make us look silly. I don't think so. I think it's really in the right place. I'm got one of those intuition deals going on, and a lot of times my intuition is right. And I'm really hoping that I'm not doing damage to my intuition by putting a forecast. I'm going to put it out there anyways. Great Comet of 2020 is on its way over the next 60 days. Let's see. Okay. 1844. The comet of 1844 was first seen at the Cape of Good Hope on the 18th of December. On the day following, it was seen by Captain Wilmot R.A. and by Mr. MacLear of the Cape Observatory. In the monthly notices of the Astronomical Society, it is usually designated as Wilmot's Comet. So this comet is following extremely close to the orbital path of Wilmot's comet. That's Wilm 0T''S. So that's Wilm 0T''S. We'll just call it Wilmot's because that's what it looks like when you look at it. I'm just going to click on this. This is from Harvard, and this is the astronomical journal. And this says, this comet was first seen at the Cape of Good Hope on the 18th of December, 1844. On the day following, it was seen by Captain Wilmot, R.A., and by Mr. McClure of the Cape Observatory. In the monthly notices of the Astronomical Society is usually designated as Wilmot's Comet. It continued to be visible to the naked eye from the date of its discovery until the end of January and was followed with the telescopes up until the 12th of March. During the latter part of December and the first week in January, it was a brilliant object in the southern hemisphere, equaling, it is said, in brightness the celebrated comet of Halley and its last appearance. After it had ceased to be visible to the naked eye, it approached sufficiently near to the equator to become visible as a telescopic comet in northern latitudes. It was then detected almost simultaneously by Professor Calla on the 5th of February, Dr. Peters, and Mr. Cooper at Naples on the 7th. To this rediscovery, we owe several valuable European observations during the latter part of its course. A rude resemblance of its elements to those of the comet of 1556 induced me to test the possibility of their being the same. Okay, interesting. One second. So we are saying that Comet Atlas, 2020 Comet Atlas, may be because it has a resemblance to the orbit of 1844. And when we read about 1844 from an 1850 science journal, it's telling us that it has a rude resemblance of the elements to those of a comet of 1556. Induced me to test the possibility of their being the same by ascertaining whether the fine series of observations made at the Cape of Good Hope, which include an angle of 60 degrees of heliocentric motion, would be best represented by an elliptical orbit. The elements of the two present great discrepancies, no doubt, but taking into account the uncertainty of the observed places in 1556 and the fact that in the month of March of that year, the comet remaining quite near the Earth for nearly 3 weeks. And I'm going to have to stop it there. Let's see if I can pop this copy into the chat room. It'll be my last thing of the night. I want to say thank you to everyone who listened this evening to Collision Course talking about Comet Atlas. We're really looking forward to the potential possibility that this comet is going to show itself in great degree and fine representation in the night sky. We'll probably still have everybody home, social distancing from one way or another. If that occurs, we were going to try to reach as many people as we can, share with them the news. There is something in the night sky that you're going to be interested in. All you have to do is go out, look into the north sky if you live in the northern hemispheres, look for that green dot in the sky. Maybe it's bigger than a green dot. Maybe it's brighter than Venus. Maybe the tail is longer than 100 degrees. If it gets anything near there, can you imagine how people will think? How I think it'll make them feel happy. I think because we're so far down the road from when astronomical events were deemed omens in a bad way, I think the civilization of 2020 will look at a great comet today and really gain some reassurance that there's something going on that may be higher than all of it. I wish you all a wonderful week. We'll see you next week between 8 and 10 p.m. right here on Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com. We are going to continue whenever it's clear to take images of Comet Atlas, and we're going to bring them back to you right here during each week of the show that we can get new images. We are going to be taking them, all the data that you need about Comet Atlas, we'll try to relay back to you so that you can share it with your friends. Remember to join us on Facebook at Collision Course 321. Remember to join us on Facebook at Cosmic Obsession Kerrville. Remember to join us here every Sunday, 8 to 10 p.m. so you can get your dose of outer space. So until next week, everyone, it's Francis and Collision Course. Clear skies. We love you.